I fell in the gruesome place of torment. I was of hard heart and a materialist. I was hopeless in this place when Jesus appeared in order to rescue me, his hand still outstretched. This time I grasped it. My hand, now clean but trembling, touched his, and the power that flowed wasn't electric, wasn't violent. It was a power of peace, a power that gave me strength in my legs. He pulled me up and I stood. I was naked, but I felt no shame. I was in hell, but I felt no fear. I stood before the Creator of the universe, and the only thing I felt was gratitude and a love so overwhelming it hurt. Where are we going? I asked. I came to get you, he said. It's time to go home. He didn't teleport me. He turned and started walking, and I followed him. The light emanating from him was like a shield. The fire of hell receded as he passed. The demons that I saw them crawling in the shadows, fleeing his presence, screeching. We passed Ricardo. I looked at him one last time. Ricardo, I whispered. Jesus paused for a moment, looked at him, and said, I called him until his last breath. There was nothing more to be done. His torment was his choice. We continued walking. The dark ground seemed to open before us, revealing a path, but it wasn't a path upwards. It was a path that seemed to go deeper. We walked for what seemed like hours, passing through scenes of horror that my mind refuses to recall in detail, torments specific to specific sins, but the light protected us, and then we stopped. We stood before a gate. It wasn't a gate of pearls, it was a gate of black iron, immense, rusty, and it was closed. On the other side, I heard a different sound. It wasn't screams of physical pain, it was whispers, millions of whispers, like a hive of snakes. What is this? I asked, feeling a chill that not even hell had given me. Jesus looked at the gate and his face turned stern. Have you seen the fate of those who sold the souls consumed by earthly pleasures, the torment of those who loved each other above all else? He turned to me, his eyes burning with a holy sadness. Now you must see the fate of those who used my name to sell the souls of others. Jesus didn't touch the gate, he just looked at it, and the gate, immense, made of tons of black iron, creaked. The sound was the most horrible I've ever heard. It wasn't the sound of metal dragging on metal, it was the sound of a million fingernails scratching a blackboard at the same time, a sound that pierced my ears and scratched my soul. The gate slowly opened, creaked, and a different darkness came out of it. It wasn't the hot, smoky darkness of the other area, it was a cold darkness, a cold that seemed to come from inside the bones, a tomb-like cold, and the smell was no longer sulfur and burnt flesh, it was the smell of mold, the smell of old books rotting, of stagnant water, of old lies. The whispers I heard from afar were now high, they were voices. One voice whispered, God told me. Another chimed, sow into my life. Said a third, that's the key to your victory. Obey your leader without questioning. These were phrases I had heard, phrases from pastors on television, from radio preachers, from men who sold blessings in exchange for offerings. We entered. The light of Jesus still protected us. But here the light seemed to fight against the shadows in a different way. The darkness was denser, most stubborn. This place wasn't a field of fire, it was a cathedral, an immense, distorted cathedral, as if designed by a madman. The Gothic arches stretched into a darkness that the ceiling couldn't reach. The stained glass windows didn't show saints, they showed images of men being applauded, of men counting money, of men on thrones, and the people, the souls there, they weren't screaming in physical pain like the others. Their torment was different. They were dressed in expensive suits, in the religious robes they preached in on earth, but the clothes were rotting on their bodies, full of mold and worms, like mine, and they were preaching, all of them, thousands of them, each on an improvised pulpit, made of piles of Bibles that seemed to be on fire, but a cold fire, a fire that didn't illuminate. They preached to an invisible audience, they gestured, shouted, cried crocodile tears, exactly as they did in earth, but the torment was this: no one heard them. Their voices came out, but fell to the ground like dead stones, and they had a desperate thirst, not for water, but for applause, for adoration. They looked into the darkness, waiting for the Amen, waiting for the glory to God from the crowd, but the only sound was the whispers, the whispers of the souls they deceived, and suddenly I saw him. I recognized him instantly. He was a famous pastor, a man who had a worldwide television program. I myself donated money to him once years ago, when my wife begged me, saying it was for God's work. He was impeccable, his gray hair combed back, his white linen suit, but his eyes were wells of panic. He was in a pulpit of solid gold, but the gold was covered in a green slime. He preached with all the strength of his lungs. God wants to make you prosperous, he shouted. Declare your victory, take possession of your blessing. But his voice was a dry hiss, and then, from the ground around him, hands began to emerge, dry hands, of old women, of widows, of desperate men. They were the hands of the people who gave him the little they had, and the hands did not grasp him. They offered coins, pennies, dirty, rusty. They threw the coins onto his pulpit. Here it is, Pastor, the voices whispered, it's all I have now. Where is my healing? Where is my own house? Where is my saved son? And each coin that hit the gold of the pulpit burned. The pastor screamed and tried to get away, but he was chained to the pulpit, and worse, in front of him was an open Bible and the words shone in red, but it wasn't the Psalms, it was his bank statements, every diverted offering, every penny used to buy his luxury cars, his mansions, it was all there, burning in letters of fire for him to read, for all eternity. He knew my word, Jesus said, stopping beside me. His voice was low, but full of holy anger. He used it, he twisted it. He took my sacrifice, my blood shed to save, and turned it into a business. He sold pure water and delivered poison. I looked at Jesus, but he preached about you. He used my name, Jesus corrected, and the difference hit me like a punch. But he didn't love me. He loved what my name could buy. He loved the power my name gave him. He built a kingdom for himself, using my bricks. The famous pastor saw me. He saw the light of Jesus. His eyes widened. Water, he shouted to me, please tell him, tell Jesus that I always spoke of him. Tell it was to him that I won millions of souls. And the whispering voices around him laughed. Souls? They mocked. You didn't win souls, you won customers, and we paid dearly. Terror gripped me. This was worse than fire. Fire was a torment of the body and of regret. This was a torment of conscience. It was perfect justice. It was reaping exactly grain by grain what was planted. Jesus, I whispered, I judge these men. I laughed. I called them thieves, but I am no better. I stole my company. I stole my family's time. I stole my wife's honor, because my torment was different. Jesus turned to me. His gaze was penetrating. You were a thief in the world, and your destiny was the golden throne you saw. You loved the world, but he, Jesus pointed to the pastor, he was a thief inside my house. He dressed as my servant. He ate at my table, and he betrayed the trust of my little children. Judgment begins with the house of God. The punishment is greater, because he knew the truth and used it to deceive. Jesus began to walk again, leading me deeper into that cold cathedral of lies. What did I show you? He said, it was the fate of those who sold their souls for pleasure. Now you see the fate of those who sold their souls for religious power. But there is something even deeper. Deeper? I asked, my voice faltering. How could there be anything worse than that? We stopped. In the center of that dark cathedral there was a well, an immense hole that descended into a darkness that seemed absolute. There was no fire coming from it, no scream. There was silence, a heavy, terrible silence. The silence of complete absence. What is this? Senha. Jesus. He looked at the well, and I saw his whole body stiffen. His light did not penetrate there. This one, he said, it is the destiny of those who had everything, had the truth, had the anointing, had my calling, and consciously chose it. Chose whom? I asked, though I already sensed the answer. The enemy, the father of lies. This is the place of those who not only sinned, but who made a pact, those who, with open eyes, sold their souls, not for pleasure or power, but for rebellion. And from the well I heard a sound that was not a cry, nor a whisper. It was the sound of a laugh, a cold, ancient, intelligent laugh, full of hatred. And Jesus pointed to the edge of the well. I need you to see one of them, a man you knew, I approached the edge of the well. The cold was so intense it felt like burning, a cold that didn't come from ice, but from the total absence of heat, the total absence of life. The light emanating from Jesus stopped at the edge, like seawater meeting sand, unable to advance in that darkness that seemed solid. It was a vacuum of God, and that sound, that cold, controlled, intelligent laugh. I looked at Jesus, my body trembling. "Who's there?" Jesus looked at the well and his face was the image of a righteous pain, a man you admired, a man who taught you to be clever, a man who showed you how to build your first throne. And then I saw him. He wasn't burning, he wasn't being tormented by demons. He was rising, or rather, he was standing there in the darkness, a few meters below the edge, but his eyes stared at me as if we were face to face. He was impeccable, the grey Italian suit, tailor-made, the platinum watch on his wrist, his hair perfectly combed. It was Mendez, the man who was my mentor, the man who gave me my first big job, the man who taught me that business is war and that pity is for the weak. I idolized him, I wanted to be him. "Mendez," my voice came out as a hiss. He smiled and it was the smile that gave me chills. It wasn't the charismatic smile he wore in the boardrooms, it was an empty, cold smile, full of ancient contempt. And the laugh I heard had been his. "So, you managed to see the truth, boy," he said. His voice was calm, exactly as I remembered, but every syllable was "I'm cold. I always told you there was a price for everything. It seems you almost paid yours." I looked at Jesus confused. "Lord," but he was a good man. He did charity, he donated to hospitals, he donated so that his name would be on the plaque. Jesus interrupted, his voice cutting like steel. "He didn't give out of love, he gave out of pride. He wasn't like you, you loved sin. This man loved the sinner." Mendez let out another short laugh. "He's right, as always, so dramatic." Mendez looked at Jesus and there was no fear in his eyes, only analysis and hatred, a cold, calculated hatred. "You said, Mendez, to Jesus, with your rules, your love, your mercy, I understood the game too early, you know? I saw your world. It's flawed. It's weak, it's based on feelings." What did you do, Mendez?" I asked, horror rising in my throat. "I did what you didn't have the courage to do," he replied, your eyes fixed on mine. "You played at sinning. You betrayed your wife. You stole money, sweetie, amateur. You did all that and still feared him." He pointed to Jesus. "Did you feel guilty?" I didn't. I saw the truth. There are two sides to this game, two powers. And I chose the winner, the one that offers power now, the one that offers control. "He doesn't offer you control," said Jesus. "He offers you the illusion of control, and you bought it. And what do you offer?" Mendez scoffed. "Submission, to kneel, to be a servant." "I don't serve, I rule, and here is your kingdom," said Jesus, pointing to the pit of utter darkness. "The kingdom you chose, the kingdom of the one who said, 'I will ascend above the Most High,' the kingdom of the one you served so well on earth that he gave you a place of honor in his house." Mendez's torment was subtle, but 1,000 times more terrible than the fire. As he spoke, I saw his eyes, which seemed so calm, blinking rapidly. And with each blink, I saw a glimpse of absolute terror. He was perfectly conscious. He saw Jesus, he saw the light, he saw what he had lost. And he was trapped in his own choice. His torment was his pride. He could not repent. His heart was so hardened, so petrified by his own ego, that he preferred the agony of being wrong to admitting he needed help. He preferred to reign in that empty darkness to serve in the light. "He cannot ask for forgiveness," Jesus whispered to me, "because to ask for forgiveness, he would have to admit that I am the Lord, and his pride is the chain that binds him to this pit. This is sin in its final form. It is not a mistake, it is not a weakness, it is a decision. It is conscious rebellion. It is looking at God and saying, 'I know who you are and I reject you.'" "I had everything on earth," Mendez said, and his voice trembled for a second. A single note of the despair he quickly controlled. "I had the money, the women, the power, and I wanted more. I wanted what was behind the curtain, And I found it. I made the pact, I signed my name, and it was worth every second, and as he said, it was worth it. A black tear ran down his eye, a tear not of sadness, but of pure rage. He wasn't crying for what he had lost. He was crying because Jesus was there proving him wrong. His agony was the presence of the truth that he could no longer deny, that refused to accept. He was being eternally consumed by his own hatred. "You are weak," Mendez spat at me. "Did you see all this? You saw the power and you chose it. You chose to be a slave. I chose to be free," I said, and the words came out of my mouth before I could think. They were Jesus' words, not mine. Mendez looked at me with a contempt that froze my soul. "There is no freedom, there is only power, and now, if you'll excuse me." He didn't fall, he wasn't pulled, he turned deliberately, with all the arrogant dignity that he had in life, and he took a step back, plunging back into the absolute darkness of the pit. He disappeared like a stone falling into an ocean of pitch. The silence returned, heavier than before. I was trembling so much that I could barely stand. I had seen sin through weakness, I had seen sin through greed, now I had seen sin through choice, pure and simple rebellion. "Lord," I choked. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. The warmth of his hand was the only thing that kept me from fainting. That cold of the pit was trying to suck the life out of me. "You needed to see," he said, his voice firm. "You needed to understand that hell is not just a punishment, it is a harvest. It is the final destination of the soul that insists on saying, 'Thy will be done,' until God finally honors that choice. And the will of man separated from me is this place." He turned me around, leading me away from that pit of silent horror. "Now come on, there's one more thing you need to see before we leave, and this is the reason I brought you here." Jesus led me away from that cold cathedral and that pit of silence. I followed him like a frightened child follows its father in the midst of a terrifying crowd. I was clean, but I felt naked. I was saved, but I was trembling. What else could exist in that place of horror? What could be worse than the fire, worse than the lying pastors, worse than the pit of eternal pride? I couldn't imagine it. "Lord, get me out of here," I begged. "I understood, please, I can't take it anymore." He stopped. We weren't in hell anymore, at least it didn't seem like it. The darkness around us was total, but it was empty. There were no screams, no smells, no cold, it was just nothing, a vacuum, and in the middle of that vacuum, Jesus turned to me. The light that came from him was the only thing that existed. "I didn't bring you here to scare you," he said, his voice gentle. "Fear doesn't generate love, fear generates blind obedience. I brought you here so that you would understand, so that you would see the end of your choices, so that you would see the price I paid." "I saw, Lord," I said, falling to my knees before him. "I saw the cross, I saw your pain, you saw my price," he said. "But you didn't see the reason why you had this chance." "I didn't understand the reason. I called your name, you called my name in the end," he said, "but others called my name for you for 35 years, and then, in the darkness ahead of us, an image formed. It was like looking through a window. I saw myself. It was me. Hours before or days, time made no sense. I was in the bar I loved, the loud music, the glass of whiskey in my hand. I was laughing, telling a dirty joke to my friends. I seemed so alive, so full of myself, but then I saw what I couldn't see before. Behind me, with his hand on my shoulder, was the creature, the demon of old leather and eyes of embers, the same one who greeted me in hell. He was there in the bar, invisible to everyone. And he was laughing along with me. His filthy mouth was close to my ear and he whispered, "Drink more, you deserve it, life is yours, she doesn't value you, you need a woman who admires you, money is power, step on them, show who's boss." And I, like a fool, I listened. I thought they were my own thoughts, my strength, my ambition. It was them all along. I saw Mendez, my mentor, standing on the other side of the table, not the physical Mendez, but his shadow, his spirit, smiling with that cold contempt, toasting me with a glass of darkness. They were celebrating me, my masters. I watched horrified, while I drank more, while I picked up my cell phone, and lied to my wife Anna, I saw the demonic creature applaud. I was drowning and I thought I was swimming. I let go. I whispered to Jesus, I opened the door for them. You opened the door, Jesus agreed, but I wasn't fighting alone. The image changed. The bar disappeared. Now I saw my dark room. The moonlight streamed through the window, and I saw Anna, my wife, kneeling beside our bed. The same moment I was in the bar, laughing with the demons. She was at home, crying. It wasn't a loud cry of anger, it was a silent, tired cry of pain. And she was praying. I didn't just hear the words, I saw them. Each word that came out of her mouth transformed into a small sphere of light, rising through the ceiling of the room. Father, I can't take it anymore. I don't recognize him anymore, but you love him. I surrender him into your hands. Bring him back, Lord. Bring my husband back, whatever it takes. The small lights rose, and I saw them piercing the darkness. And I saw the bar seen again from afar. The lights of her prayer, like golden arrows, descended. They struck the demonic creature that was on my shoulder. The demon screamed, a scream I didn't hear there, but that I heard now, a scream of pain. The demon tried to make me drink faster, tried to pull me out of the bar, to another place, but Anna's prayers were like a shield of light around me, holding me there, preventing me from going deeper. The creature was furious because her prayers were interfering with its plans, and then the image changed one last time. It wasn't my room, it was the simple kitchen of my childhood home, and I saw my mother, but she was younger. It was 20 years ago. I was a rebellious teenager. I had just left home slamming the door. She was in the kitchen alone in the early morning. She was holding a picture of me, a picture from when I was a child, smiling before the world hardened me. And she was on her knees on the cold floor. She cried so much her body trembled. She sobbed, "My God! My son, my boy is getting lost. I gave you my son, Lord. I consecrated him to you and the enemy is stealing him." She beat her chest, a pain that I never knew she felt. "I can't lose him to hell, Lord, I can't." And then she screamed, a scream that broke my soul there in that void. "Lord Jesus, save his soul, I beg you. Save my son, even if it means putting him through the fire, but don't let his soul be lost. Bring him back, whatever the cost. Save him through the fire." I fell to the ground. I finally understood. The molten gold, the worms, the throne, the shepherd, the pit. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't just my sin. It was the answer, the terrible answer, painful, but merciful, the answer to a desperate mother's prayer, saved by fire. The hell I saw was God's mercy. It was the only way to wake me up, the only way to break me, the only way to make me look up. I cried, I sobbed as my mother sobbed. I kissed the ground where Jesus was. I didn't know, I groaned, I didn't know they fought so hard for me. Jesus put his hand on my shoulder. The image of my mother disappeared. We were back in the void, just me and him. Their love, Jesus said, was the anchor that allowed me to seek you. My blood was the price, but their prayers were the ropes I used to pull you from the pit. He lifted me up. I looked into his eyes. The sadness was gone. Now there was only love and seriousness. I showed you hell. I showed you the battle. I showed you the price. Now you have a choice. Choice? I asked, confused. I choose you forever. You are here in eternity, he said, his voice calm, but his body still there in the bar. His heart stopped. You have a choice, he pointed, and in the darkness I saw my body fallen on the bar floor, my friends looking at me terrified, one of them on the phone, shouting for an ambulance. "Can you stay here with me? Your place is prepared or you can go back." "Go back?" I asked. "Go back there?" "Go back," he confirmed, "to the pain, to the struggle, to your wife who needs a husband, to your son who needs a father, to the world you need to hear this story. The choice is yours. But if you go back, it won't be the same as before. You will be mine, and they will hate you for it. Go back," the word echoed in the void. Go back to that dirty world, that world of lies, of pain, of temptation. Go back to the body that betrayed me, to the life that almost destroyed me. I looked at Jesus. His light was peace, his gaze was home. Being there in his presence, even in that void, was the end of all pain, of all fear. It was the end of the struggle. I was clean, I was forgiven, I was home. Staying was easy, staying was the prize. I looked at the scene in the bar, my pale body on the dirty floor, my useless friends, standing in panic. Going back was unthinkable. Going back was choosing war again. And then Jesus, reading my soul, changed the image. I no longer saw the bar. I saw the door of my house. It was 3 a.m., a loud knock. I saw my wife Anna in her bathrobe, her eyes swollen, sleepy and crying, opening the door. There were 2 policemen. I saw her face change, I saw her collapse, I heard her scream no, which seemed to come from the same place where the screams from hell came from. The scene changed, my son sitting on the bed the next morning asking, "Mom, why are you crying? Where is Dad?" I saw his life. The first day of school without me, graduation without me, his wedding day without me, and I saw the anger growing in him, the anger against the father who abandoned him, who chose drink instead of him. I saw my son in his early 20s in a bar laughing loudly, with a glass in his hand and a demon whispering in his ear, the story repeating itself. Why wasn't I there to warn him? Why wasn't I there to fight for him, like my mother and my wife fought for me? A sob tore me apart. No, no, I can't, I said to Jesus, I can't let this happen. The scene changed from new. I saw my parents in the office signing the company papers, my partner, all of them laughing, celebrating my death, dividing what I built. They were blind, happy, on their way to the same golden throne that was prepared for me. They don't know, I whispered, looking at Jesus. They have no idea. They are as I was. No one is praying for them as they prayed for me. They will fall, all of them. The terror of hell returned, but in a different way. It wasn't fear for me, it was fear for them. I looked at the face of Jesus, the King of the universe, who wept for me, who descended to the most unclean place to find me because my mother and wife asked, and he offered me the same choice he made. He left the peace of heaven to come to the war of earth. How could I choose peace now that I knew? How could I sit in heaven, clean and safe, while the world burned? They will hate you, Jesus repeated. His voice wasn't a threat, it was a certainty. I know, I said, tears streaming down my face. They'll call me crazy, they'll take my money, they'll laugh at me, my friends will abandon me, I'll lose everything I thought was important. I took a deep breath. The air in that place seemed to be made of pure truth, but I was nothing like that. I was a dead man, playing with broken toys. Ricardo is thirsty, Mendez is in the well, I can't stay. I stood up and for the first time I turned to Jesus. Not like a criminal looks at a judge or like a beggar looks at a king, I looked at him like a soldier looks at his captain. If I can stop my son from sitting in that bar, if I can take one person off that wide path, then send me back. I stretched out my hands. Send me back to the war, but don't let me go alone, please. I can't do it without you. Jesus didn't smile. Joy in him was something much deeper than a smile. It was a light that seemed to explode from within him, filling the entire void. He placed his pierced hands on my shoulders. The power and love that flowed to me was so intense that my knees almost gave way. I never left you alone, not even when you hated me. He said, now you will return, but not as before. You will return as mine. Your old self died in that bar. He leaned closer. I felt his breath on my face, a breath of life. The enemy that tormented you will try to destroy you. He will use your past, your shame, your family. The battle will be 10 times harder, but he can no longer touch you, because you are mine. His voice became a command. Go, tell them, show them, love your wife as I loved the church and gave my life for her, raise your child in my ways and tell everyone, time is short, I will go, Lord, I will go, I promised, weeping with a painful gratitude, but how? Will I be with you? He said, now breathe. He let go of me. The feeling of being safe, of being home, vanished. The vacuum began to spin. I was no longer standing. I was falling. Darkness swallowed me. The light of Jesus became a distant point. Up above, I was falling at full speed. Back to my body, back to my life. I heard a sound. The sound I had heard before, coming from afar, the sirens. They were loud now. And then I heard the voice of that friend of mine from the bar shouting, "He has no pulse. He's not breathing, he's dead." I felt the impact as if a truck had hit me. An excruciating pain exploded in my chest. It was 1,000 times worse than molten gold, because it was real, it was physical. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I felt pressure on my chest. 1, 2, 3 times. Someone was hitting me. Someone was doing CPR. "Come on, come back!" someone shouted. And then an electric pain, like a million needles. It shot through my body, a shock, my whole body arched and air rushed in, a cold, dirty air, smelling of spilled drink and cigarette smoke, burned my lungs like acid. I opened my eyes. The light was too much light, not the pure, living light of Jesus. It was the sickly yellow light of the bar lamps, mixed with the aggressive flashing of the ambulance's blue and red lights. A face was above mine, very close, shouting, a man in uniform, "He's back, we have a pulse, we have a pulse." The smell hit me like a punch, spilled whiskey, old smoke, vomit, the filth of the world covering me. The pain in my chest was a fire, a physical fire. I tried to breathe and it was like swallowing broken glass. "Calm down, sir, you had a cardiac arrest, we're taking you to the hospital." I blinked. I saw my friends leaning against the wall, pale, scared, and I saw around them like a dark fog. I saw the creatures, not as clear as in hell, but I saw them as creeping shadows, whispering in their ears, "He's crazy, get out of here." And I saw that my friends were listening. They were scared, not for me, but for themselves. I didn't feel anger towards them, I felt such deep, overwhelming pity. They were in the same bar as me, doing the same things and had no idea what awaited them. They put me on the stretcher. The movement was abrupt. The siren went off, a howl in the real world that was almost as bad as the screams of hell. The paramedic, the man who yelled in my face, was checking my vital signs. He looked tired. There were deep dark circles under his eyes. I looked at him, not like a patient but how, I don't know. I saw the ring on his finger. I saw a small faded photo pinned to his badge of a little girl and I felt the love he had for that child. I felt the presence of Jesus telling me, "He is also mine, I love him." I grabbed his arm, my hand was weak, trembling. The man was startled. "Calm down, sir, you need to be quiet." I tried to speak, my throat felt full of sand. You know Jesus?" I croaked. The paramedic looked at me as if I were crazy. "Sir, you had a heart attack, try not to speak." "No," I insisted, using the strength I didn't have. "He is real, hell is real." The man shook his head and turned to check a monitor. He thought I was delirious because of the lack of oxygen. I closed my eyes. The pain was immense, but the fear had vanished. The panic of dying was over. I knew where I was going. Oh, my terror was now of a different kind. It was for them, for the paramedic, for my friends at the bar, for everyone who was walking around laughing, blind, straight into the fire. The hospital was a blur. White lights, many voices, needles in my arm, masks on my face. I heard words like massive heart attack, lucky to be alive, myocardial damage. They were just noises. The only thing I could think was, I need to see her, I need to talk to Anna. I don't know how much time passed, hours, maybe a day. I woke up in a room. The beeping of the machine beside me was the only sound. And then the door opened. It was her, Anna, my wife. She seemed to have aged 10 years in one night. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there were no tears now. There was a cold rage, an exhaustion that went beyond mere tiredness. She stopped near the door, arms crossed, as if afraid to get close. She smelled of me, the smell of whiskey and the perfume of another woman that still lingered on my clothes, now cut up and thrown in a plastic bag in the corner. Then she said, her voice flat, "Dead, you did it." You almost killed yourself. She was expecting the lie. She was expecting the darling. I don't know what happened. They forced me to drink, the usual excuse. I looked at her, but I didn't see the wife who annoyed me, the woman I cheated on. I saw the warrior. I saw the woman on her knees in the dark, crying and fighting for my soul, while I was laughing with demons. I saw the woman whose prayers were the ropes Jesus used to pull me from the abyss. I couldn't speak. I just started to cry. Not the fake cry of someone who's been caught, but the cry I cried before God, an ugly cry that came from deep in my soul, a broken cry. "Stop it," she said, her voice trembling. "There's no use crying now, I can't take your promises anymore." I raised my hand, the hand that held the 4-needle. "Anna," I choked. "Forgive me." She stopped. She frowned. I had never said that word, not like that. "I know." I kept crying so hard I could barely speak. "I know everything. I know your prayers. I know it broke you." "What are you talking about?" she asked, taking a cautious step closer. "Are you drunk?" "High?" "I was," I said. "I was drunk on my own arrogance. I was high on my ego, Anna. I died in that bar." She shook her head. "The doctors said your heart stopped." "You didn't." "I died," I said, and my voice rose. "I went, I saw hell, Anna. I saw the place I was building for myself, the golden throne, the worms, the thirst." Her eyes widened, not with disbelief, but with recognition. "What?" she whispered. "And I saw him," I continued, tears streaming down my face and soaking the hospital sheet. "I saw Jesus, and he showed me you on your knees. He showed me my mother, begging him to save me, even if it was by fire." Anna's chin trembled. She brought her hand to her mouth. She knew, those were her words, my mother's words, words I had never heard. She fell into the chair beside the bed. She began to cry, but they weren't tears of anger, they were tears of shock, of fear, and of a hope she thought was dead. The following days in the hospital were a different kind of torment. My body ached, but my soul was awake for the first time. The doctors came, talked about medication, about changing my diet, about stress. I agreed with everything, but I knew my problem wasn't cholesterol, it was sin. The day of discharge arrived. Anna took me home. The silence in the car was heavy. She didn't know what to say, neither did I. I was seeing the world through her eyes. The first time, the colors seemed brighter, but the darkness in the people seemed darker. I saw someone in the car next to me yelling on their cell phone, and I saw the stress and hatred emanating from them in waves. We stopped in front of our house, the luxury house I bought to show off my success, the house where I lied so much. I got out of the car, my knees were weak. I looked at the front door and I was afraid to go in. I was afraid that the old man, the owner of that house, was still inside waiting for me. I went in. The smell, expensive room fragrance, leather, polished wood, it all seemed fake, it seemed like a stage set. Anna went to the kitchen. "I'm going to make some tea," she said, her voice trembling. She needed to do something normal. I didn't follow her. I walked like a ghost to my office, the place of my power, the mahogany desk, the leather chair that cost $10,000, and on the shelf, the collection of expensive whiskies. I stopped. I smelled a very faint sulfur smell. I felt. A shiver ran down my spine. That whisper, the same one from the bar, "Are you tired?" It was a bad dream, a nightmare. "Have a drink, you deserve it. You almost died." I looked at the bottle. The temptation was real, that old comfort. And I heard men's cold laugh. I looked at my reflection in the dark window pane, a pale, thin man with frightened eyes, and I felt the darkness in the room trying to pull me back. I was in the lion's den, and I was alone. Then I heard a noise. I turned around. My son, my 6-year-old boy, he was standing in the doorway, looking at me with those big, frightened eyes. He held a piece of paper in his hand. It was the drawing I had ignored. Our family and Jesus with his hands outstretched over us. My son didn't say anything. He just held the drawing out to me. "Daddy," he asked, his little voice breaking the silence and the power of the enemy, "are you crying?" And there I knew, the war had begun. I looked into those little eyes, innocent eyes that saw me as a hero, when in truth I was the villain. And that drawing, the drawing I had despised, the family and Jesus, that simple image drawn with crayons was stronger than the army of demons that awaited me in that office. That filthy whisper that told me to drink, that called me tired, fell silent, suffocated by the pure love in my son's eyes. The smell of sulfur disappeared, replaced by the smell of paper and crayons. "Is Daddy crying?" I whispered. "Why did Daddy come back, son? Did Daddy really come back?" I didn't go to the whiskey bottle, I went to him. I fell to my knees in front of him. The man who refused to bow to God was now kneeling before a child. I hugged him, and it wasn't the quick, distracted hug I used to give. I held him as if he were the only thing holding me to life. I buried my face in his small shoulder and sobbed. I cried for the childhood I was stealing from him. I cried for the nights he spent waiting for me. I cried because I almost orphaned him, or worse, left him to be raised by a ghost. "I love you, son," I said, and they were the first true words I had said in 10 years. "Daddy loves you so much." He stood still for a second, startled by my emotion. And then his little arms wrapped around my neck. "I love you too, Daddy. Don't get sick again." "I won't," I promised. Not to him, but to Jesus. "I won't." Anna appeared at the door. She saw the scene, the broken husband, crying, clinging to his son. The filthy office, full of temptation. She held the teacup with trembling hands. Her face was closed off. She had seen this before. The tears of regret after a bad night. The empty promises. I stood up, holding my son's hand. I looked at Anna. "Anna, no." She cut me off. "Don't say anything. I don't want to hear. Just rest." She didn't believe me, and I don't blame her. Why would she? Words meant nothing. I had used all the good words and turned them into lies. I looked at the shelf, the row of expensive bottles, my trophies, my collection of liquid sins. I felt the eyes of Jesus on me. "Love your wife as I loved the church." And loving at that moment meant killing what she hated. I walked to the shelf. Anna flinched, thinking I was going to grab a glass. "No," she began. "The doctor said." I didn't look at her. I grabbed the first bottle, a 30-year-old whiskey. It was worth more than a month's salary for an honest man. The demon whispered again, now desperate, "Just one. To celebrate life." I walked out of the office, past Anna, and into the kitchen. I turned on the tap and opened the bottle. In front of her, I poured the $5,000 worth of liquor down the drain. The strong smell of alcohol and oak filled the kitchen. Anna choked. She looked at me as if I had set fire to their home. I went back to the office, picked up the second bottle and the third, one by one, the French cognac, the imported vodka, the gin. I poured out every drop. The little sink became a river of expensive poison. It was a baptism. Eu estava lavando a minha casa de amna propria imundis, quando a